AndyMoore.com. On the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, let me tell you this. My pods here was on top of absolutely everything on Friday. If you guys hung with the show and listened up until their draft broadcast got underway with the Colts, Rick Venturi was all over nearly everybody's name in that. It was an amazing piece of Jedi work that you did right there, Rick Venturi.
Well,
amazing.
Thank you, John. Sometimes you even a blind squirrel, if he digs hard enough, will find a nut. So, that's just a result of a lot of hard work, a lot of fun, and in some ways, the more I get to know Chris, I don't mean socially or that kind of stuff, but the more I get to know him, and I've known him forever, going back to his scouting days, but the more I know him now as a decision maker, there is a predictability to him, and I think it's a good one. There's a predictability to which way he's going to go, what type of players he likes. There's going to be guys that, they're going to have strength. They're going to have basically traits, and tools that he looks for, and it's going to weave consistently through every pick that he makes. And I think that's really the only way that you're going to be successful over the long haul. The other thing about him that I really like, Belichick was this way, I'm that way, is he really doesn't give a darn about perception, about mock drafts, about what other people think. He stays true to his beliefs and what he thinks. He's not influenced. He's not going to make a decision on anything other than what he thinks is a football decision. And so, knowing those tools that I know and then studying tape, I'm in a much better position to kind of predict who he wants. I thought that, once he was out of that first round, and, once you're out of that first round, then you're really out of the defensive lineman as we knew it. And really, I had said I wasn't too far off. I said that there were 13 top defenders that would probably not get to us, and 12 of them for sure did not. In the 13th guy, obviously, was Montez Sweat. But, I think that's strictly a medical thing, and if you've ruled him out ahead of time, then there's no use crying about it. That's it. I mean, Washington is either the smartest team in history or a lot of people just misread it. So, so once we got out of there, I had said to you, the second round will really be heavy in receivers, in corners. There was no doubt in my mind, and that began to change. And as I said to you Friday night, Yasin basically fits what Ballard likes in a corner. Not necessarily, I like Yasin. I don't love Yasin. I like him. But he fits what Ballard likes in a corner. Banago is a guy that I've been pushing, and maybe guys didn't hear me because I was calling him Banogu.
That's what I've been calling him too.
I guess it's Banagu. But
Banagu.
He was the guy that I really liked. He was a Morse Reservoir All-Star like Leonard was a year ago, which meant, basically I really hoped to get him like on the third round. Well, Chris was willing to go up with that 46th pick like he was for Leonard. So, hopefully he strikes gold twice. But, we'll get into each one of these guys because I can dissect them for you. But he's a guy with great metrics, good film, all the stuff that he looks for. And then I think Parris Campbell is the one guy of the draft. I mean, I like the draft. I think the draft is solid. I think without a high one, the twos are solid. I particularly like the safeties, the two safeties, and I still consider Tell a safety. I think those two kind of hybrid guys, Green and Speed, are very interesting. Just kind of guys that have terrific metrics and show some ability. And they're just going to be interesting guys to see where they might fit. But they're very, very talented guys, kind of men without a country. But certainly skill. Now, I think the one guy who has the chance to be transformational, of course, is Campbell. Campbell is a very unique player. He is very much like Eric Metcalf, who I had, Terry Metcalf's son, who I had back with the Browns, who was one of the best jokers in the league. Metcalf is much better, in my opinion, than Eric. I look at him, and it's a bad name right now because of the character flaw, but on the field, I see him as a potential Tyreek Hill. I really do. He's a guy that is so fast and yet is a great athlete with it. He can get behind the defense. He can catch something short and go. You can put him in the backfield and take him out of there. The biggest thing is he has nothing but upside and tremendous tools. Now, he's not a refined player at any position. He isn't a refined receiver, but that's only because he's been used in so many different spots. But he is totally a guy that is a game effector, and you have to include the returns in there. So to me, the gold standard of this draft is Parris Campbell. I like most of the other guys that for different reasons. There's pluses and minuses on all of them. You have to be careful right now, and I wouldn't pay too much attention to anybody's grades. I think they're really it just gives people something to do really and justify their paycheck, because that will all start to unfold in July and this year and next year, and it's impossible to judge a draft. I don't think anybody last year after Nelson, that the pundits thought that that was going to be a an historic draft like it turned out, because I don't think anybody, if they did, they're lying, would have thought that Leonard and Smitty would come in and have such an impact on your team as rookies. So, that just tells you kind of like it is. And, this is the happiness season. If we keep having press conferences, by Friday we'll have 9 Hall of Famers. So, you just take it, you take it in stride.
In the best locker room ever, so yeah.
Oh, God. We have so many
I shouldn't
candidates
even, no,
for the
no, I
National
shouldn't.
Honor Society.
I shouldn't have done this.
No,
I'm
you
sorry.
don't. No. It's all a good thing. It really is. But just remember this, all that stuff, all that character, all that stuff, when people start talking culture, there's 3 things that win. There's 3 primary reasons for winning. 1 is talent. 1A is coaching, and 1B is in-game discipline. Everything else is ancillary, and everything else is fluid. So much of that stuff, attitude, culture, all that stuff, is really dependent on wins and losses. Don't kid yourself. I've been in too many pro locker rooms. Now, what we're going to see in this draft is, and I'll go through each and every guy as you'd like, but the one thing, and this is why I say it's beginning to be predictable in a good way on what Chris Ballard likes. And, number one, he's always going to have a guy who has a legitimate size, not necessarily huge, but a size for the position. And most importantly, he's going to have length. Yasin, for instance, has a 77 3/8 wingspan, which means he's long. He can play long. Every single guy that he drafts has length to him. He has real length. Leonard's strength, other than instinct, is length. All those strips come from length. Every guy that he drafts has functional speed. He's a little bit more liberal at the corner. Yasin, for instance, is a 4.51. He's above 4.5, but he's right at the edge. Everybody that he drafts, minus offensive linemen, you have to factor them out, has explosiveness in the vertical jump. And I said this a year ago, and we did it again. I'll go through every one of them. We lead the nation. We lead the league in vertical. If we have vertical jump contests, we are in the Super Bowl, no question about it. And then 2 things that are obvious. He really likes football IQ, which I do too. Football IQ is really important. Dumbasses get you beat. They make mistakes. No, they do.
No, you're right.
They make mistakes.
You're right.
Football IQ was always. I learned that from Bill B. football smarts, make coaching a lot better.
I'm going to have to make a shirt out of that quote. Dumbasses get you beat.
They get you beat. And then, of course, he likes character. I mean, we will also lead the nation in National Honor Society guys. On defense, I think what he treasures is guys that can be disruptive. When you look at those two guys, Jerry Green, for instance, and E.J. Speed, they don't really have a position. They've got really good metrics. But wherever they play, they're a little bit disruptive. They're not perfect. I mean, I'm not even sure where you play them right now, but they're disruptive guys. Yasin, he's not the fastest guy in the world. He's not necessarily even the greatest athlete, but he is a guy. I mean, he will get his hands on balls. That's why they took Quincy Wilson. Yasin has more strips than Gypsy Rose Lee, to be honest with you. I mean, he really can get the ball. And then on offense, he really likes versatility, whether it's a running back like Campbell and Hines, or whether it's just different positions. He likes versatility, even on those down the line linemen. Not so much the big guy Barton, but Patterson is a kid that I kind of like on the last round there, who has, he has position versatility. He's played guard, center. And when you look at all those guys that he kind of handles, even in those free agents like the Bames and those guys, and Smitty was that way, they're versatile. So if you kind of make profiles on that, you can kind of fit. Now, like I said, I like this draft. I think it's really solid. Again, I really like the second round. I really like the two safeties. I think the bottom is interesting because there's some innate talent there. What I see that Chris has done is, one, I think he's taken a below average roster when he came in here in 2017. Even though the team had gone to 4-12, it was diminishing 8-8, 8-8 down to 4-12, and the 4-12 was a product, obviously, of luck not being there. But the roster had diminished after the first 3 years, just too many mistakes. And I said it back then, it was a below average. Even then, even when we were playing good, I said we were living on borrowed time. So I think he's taken that from below to good. I think Jim Irsay used the best term within his narrative over the weekend. I think what this class does and what this offseason does is it makes you better. I don't think it's transformational, but I think you go from good to better. I don't think you've gone from good to great yet, talent, but I definitely think you've gone from good to better. And, at this stage now, John, it's no longer just the draft. It's what is your off season done. So now you have to factor in Houston and Funchess into the as far as new people into the draft, and you have to do that across the board with all teams. When I evaluate teams now, like the Raiders, they've got to get a top grade because of what they've added in free agency and then the draft. I mean, they've had a knockout year. That doesn't mean they're going to be great, but they just had a knockout year on paper. So, like I said, I think Jim said it best using the term better. And I think that's what it is. I think this class will take them from good to better. Still need to get great, but I do think that Parris Campbell, the excitement, the electricity that he brings, and like I said, I hate to compare him to a guy that's an absolute bum, but in terms of football, what Tyreek Hill had done for the Chiefs, I think he can do that for us. I really do.
Rick Venturi joins us on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. My love affair with wide receivers, I'm glad you're staying here, or at least starting here with Parris Campbell. Where did he compare to others, like A.J. Brown, for example, that were suggested in round number 2, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, others like that?
Good. And, you asked this question, and if you remember, after Metcalf and who went low 2, he's kind of boomer bust, the kid, the big guy. Marquise Brown went to Baltimore. I think it's a great pick. I know he's 166, but I think Baltimore really helped themselves by getting that kid receiver. And then I said after that there were 6 guys I liked. Now, I liked Hakeem Butler. He went way down. The knock on Butler is that he's not a consistent hand guy, and, that may be true. All I know is he has more catches, plus 20, than anybody in a college game. He's good after the catch. All right, inconsistent hands. The other guy I liked on the outside was Emmanuel Hall, who went later. Now, a bunch of guys that went in the twos who I thought were really, really good was Deebo Samuel and A.J. Brown. And those guys went in that second round like I thought they would. And those guys are really good football players. I mean, they're outstanding football players. They're slot receivers, outside guys. And then there was two guys that I said I thought were really the bang for the buck, and Terry McLaurin, who we all know here locally. And I think that's a great pick by Washington, great pick by Washington on the third round. I think Washington really did a good job. And then I said the best entity, the best kind of unique guy, you can't define him, was Parris Campbell, because he's just a guy that, I don't know if he's a slot, outside guy. The thing with Parris is, though, he has more game-breaking ability than any of them. His 4.31 is legitimate. I mean, it's not just 4.31 on the track speed. We've seen him in games just pull away from people. He can be a magnificent slot with that speed and that elusiveness, return guy. You can run him on the gadgets. Like I said, if you think on what Tyreek Hill did for the Chiefs, that's what I think he does for us. I mean, all of a sudden he lines up someplace and runs right by him. They're used to covering punches. All of a sudden he lines up out there on that corner, and he's got about 6 steps faster. I mean, the thing about him, what I said was, and I believe it, is you have to have a plan for him. He's not going to come in and be a refined guy like an A.J. Brown or a Deebo Samuel, somebody who's played those positions over and over and over. But his upside is beyond all of them.
So Rick Venturi, he's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I tell you what, I'm going to take a quick break here and come back because I kind of want to set this up for you and tease it a little bit. Kind of in the fashion you just explained, Parris Campbell, and how you liked him compared to others in the neighborhood of the draft this weekend. Rock Ya-Sin, I want to start there because we both had talked about the Colts going cornerback, wide receiver early on day number 2. They certainly did that. I was Greedy Williams and I was Hakeem Butler. They didn't go that direction, but I want to know why Rock Ya-Sin and how he can help this secondary in a more immediate type of fashion. Is that okay?
Gotcha.
Rick, you're on hold. We'll come back. Rick Venturi, you got to hear a breakdown like no other of the NFL draft this past weekend. We'll rejoin Rick and your questions and more. Other side next.
The Ride with JMV, FM 107.5 and 1070 The Fan.
A quick shout to the manager of the Wanamaker Feed and Seed Pink Panthers. I don't know if Lenny's going to make it. We've had issues. Todd Livesay. I don't know if I'm going to send you a text here. I don't think we're going to make it today. My apologies. I love going to Wanamaker too, Tony. Wanamaker Feed and Seed is right over there by the Ordinary. The best pizza around. Did you know that, Tony?
No, never been down there.
Wanamaker Feed and Seed, baby. The softball fields are right off of Post Road, right next to I-74 and Post Road right there. So quick shout out to Todd Livesay, the skipper of Wanamaker Feed and Seed right there. Sorry about that. Back with Rick Venturi right now. Rock Ya-Sin, how did he compare to any of the other cornerbacks that went off the board in that general vicinity?
Yeah, now this is, I've always said this, and having coached him and having drafted him, I think that the corner position in the National Football League is the most difficult position to evaluate and then in effect to going ahead and project. I think basically it comes down to, what do you prefer? I mean, there are people in the National Football League that love Greedy Williams because of the speed, his length, and his ability to play man-to-man. I love Long and Bunting for that reason. Those guys are 4.42. I know I can get up and play man-to-man with them. I also like Lane, and their numbers are great numbers. They're faster than 4.5 and so forth and so on. Now, I thought the two corners that Chris would like, if you follow him closely over the years, would have been Baker, who went on the first round, and then Yasin, and he probably would have always liked Yasin better if he had to make the choice between the two. If you analyze what he wants, he will take a corner with what I call functional speed. Yasin is big at 6 foot. Yasin is 6 foot, 192. He looks like Travarius White from Buffalo, who I really like. He's physical. He's physical for a corner. He's a tough kid and a great kid. He's tough. He has toughness, and he is a great, great competitor. We saw that, at Temple. We saw him compete in the Senior Bowl. So he measures up there. He has good length with the 77-plus inch wingspan, and he has vertical explosion. His vertical is 39.5, which is really good. Now, the only issues that you have, in my opinion, the caution lights are pure athleticism. He runs, a lot of people in my world say that the most important metrics in a corner are the 40, the short shuttle, and the 3-cone, because the 3-cone measures overall ability to change to fluid hips, to be able to move and go, and the short shuttle is quickness. Well, basically Yasin runs a 7.31 cone, which would put him at the lower end. Long, for instance, is 6.45. Lane is 6.90. If you go back, Quincy Wilson was I forget what he is, but Quincy had a really good short shuttle. It was like 4.02. And Yasin is really below. He's really at 4.31. That's not. Most of those real good corners run between 3.9 and 4.02. To be honest with you, so those aren't none of that is debilitating. It really isn't, because this is a good football player. Yasin is a good football player, but don't kid yourself. There are some caution lights there. What I like about him, though, is I think he'll make up for any of that with his toughness, with his competitiveness, and he's very raw. He transferred from Presbyterian to Temple. He hasn't had like 4 years in a program. I think when he gets up there and presses, he looks really good pressing, but he never uses his hands. He never really gets his hands on anybody. But see, that's something that a coach can coach. Now, they haven't been able to do it with Quincy Wilson for whatever reason. I don't know. He hasn't really improved in that area. But if you can get Yasin where he can get up and really begin to use his hands, I think he can be a really, really good press guy. The other thing that I think just stands out with me to him, and this is something that's really critical and very hard to evaluate, he is really good on the ball. When that ball is in the air and he's covering a guy, he never panics. He's a guy that can strip it. He can get it out. He has the natural ability to fight for the ball. Like I said, he has a ton of PBUs. I mean, he can get that ball out, and that's something that's priceless. So, I think you have a really good football player here. I don't think there's any question about it. It's pretty interesting that the two picks here by Ballard at corner, both second-round draft choices, have been Wilson and Yasin.
Yeah.
Both of them have very similar traits. Now, Yasin comes in with a much better temperament. That was a question on Wilson, and it has got him into trouble here. Now,
are they hoping Marvell Tell kind of turns out to be Greedy Williams' length?
Well, here's the problem on that. First of all, I really like the two safeties, okay? First of all, I really like Willis. There's no question that I really like Willis. Willis is a compact alpha dog. He doesn't his playing speed is better than his running speed. He runs about a 4.52, which is really not bad for a safety at 34.5 vertical, 22 bench press, 5'11", 230, really compact. He reminds me of a kid I had who was a terrific safety at Cleveland, Stephon Moore. He's a little bit like, I think, Byard, if he develops, could be like Byard at Tennessee, and he is an alpha dog. I think he is a guy that right now most of his action has been in the first and second level. I mean, he's a guy that plays really tough around the box, good tackler, can play man on a tight end. He plays man on a slot. He played some nickel, but I thought he was really grabby in the slot on the White House. I thought he was grabby, but a lot of ability. And he's not a liability in the back end. He didn't play as much in the back end, but when he was in the back end, I thought he was more than presentable. And he's a guy that can run the show back there. He has that safety mentality. And so I really like him. And you and I talked about improving the secondary, so I'm very happy with these 3 picks. Now, here's the thing on Tell. I really like Tell. Tell was a Marsh Reservoir All-Star, a third-day guy, and that's where he ended up being picked. And he is a long, 6'2", 198. He's got some freakish characteristics. I mean, he's got a 42-inch vertical, 136-inch long jump, 6'6", 3-cone, and a 401 short shuttle. Keep in mind that Yasin ran a 4.31 short shuttle, so that is lightning. Now, the one thing he's not, though, and this is pretty interesting for a guy with those kind of freakish, he's not purely vertically fast. He's like a 4.57 at his pro days, so that is really on the edge, and that's why I would be leery of playing him on the corner. Just because he has long arms doesn't make you a corner. And those are personnel guys talking. When you've coached a lot in the league, you realize that a kid that's played safety his whole college career, I think I've always said this on defense, you develop inside-out instincts and outside-in instincts. And sometimes you can't move from one to the other. I remember I had Bickett, who was a Pro Bowl right outside linebacker here, and he was a terrific outside linebacker in a 43, and in a 34 defense, and always played on the right side. And I thought when we evolved to the 4-3 that he would have no trouble being the Sam linebacker on the line of scrimmage, and he was never the same guy on the left side. So even moving from right to left can affect a guy. See, that's personnel guys talking about, well, we can take this guy and make him a linebacker, this guy and stand him up and all that. That's personnel talk. There's also an instinct that is inherent. I like the kid at safety, and the reason that I like the kid at safety is I think that's where the game's going. You've got to have guys that can play in open air at safety, that can tackle. I think he's a better tackler than Hooker. He doesn't have the long-range ball skills that Hooker does, but he does a lot of things in that second level. He can drop down and cover people. I think he has a lot of talent. I would be leery of putting him at the corner. I mean, you can try it out quickly, but I see that guy as the modern day safety with the zone reads, with all the terrific slots and the way people exchange their wideouts inside, and you see all these hybrid tight ends, just one after another. Guys like Fant coming in the league at 4 or 5. I mean, you want safeties that can cover. The day of the box safety, has gone the way of the Buffalo, in my opinion. And so I'm very happy with these two guys. I think one kind of plays better at strong, one kind of plays better at free. They're probably going to look him at corner, but, if the 4.57 is confirmed, that's what I have at pro day. He didn't run the 40 at the combine. That's a little scary for me at the corner, but I like both those guys a lot, John.
All right, I want to talk about when we return here. We'll take a break. Okereke, right?
Yep.
And Willis, and then get into the speed situation as well. Rick, put you on hold. Come back for a final time. The best breakdown you're going to get on the Colts NFL draft is right here. Rick Venturi to close it strong next.
The Ride with JMV, FM 107.5 and 1070 The Fan.
And welcome back. Rick, final time with us. Podcast 1070thefan.com, and all this is said and done. Back to the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Okereke and Willis. What about these guys as potential sooner rather than later rotational guys or I mean, what do you think about these guys' opportunity to play coming up in 2019?
Well, let me digress 1 minute, because
Sure.
we didn't talk much about Banago, okay? And of course, Banago was my most valuable
He was.
Morris Reservoir All-Star, and I always try to get guys I can compare it to, and I thought Banago was the best edge guy once you got past that very elite, and some of his metrics are just as good. So I was looking for somebody to compare him to, because I really saw him perfectly as a 34 outside linebacker and a rusher for us. And so I went back, and the guy that he's most like, believe it or not, is Justin Houston coming out. Houston was 6'3", 255. He's 6'3", 250. Houston ran a 4.62. He runs a 4.62. Basically, Houston vertical 36.5. He verticals 40. And Houston ran a 4.37 short shuttle. He runs a 4.27. So he is actually coming out. I mean, metrics, they're off the charts. And this is really a good, versatile kid. And I think this is a real good pick. I doubt if anybody knew him till we brought him up. But he's a guy that I tracked really hard. And I think this is class.
You were all over that.
This is
all
typical of a Ballard guy, not worrying about what anybody else perceives, but seeing him as a fit. Now, Willis, I do like. I don't know if I called him the wrong name. Willis was the guy I was talking about at strong safety, who reminded me so much of Stephon Moore, and I think could be another Bayard. I think he's in the mix quickly. You and I both felt that our safety position is not in cement. We re-signed Gathers, but it was only for a year. He's never made it through. Hooker's never made it through. So I like the idea that we brought two potential safeties. I would say that he's more of a Gathers type, but I like his ability, to go back and play deep a little bit. I think Willis is in the mix. I think he'll be a terrific upgrade on the special teams. He is an alpha dog. He's a football player. Now, when you talk about the other guy, okay, that's a little bit different situation. Ukariki, okay. Ukariki now is a very interesting guy. He's very, very athletic. I mean, 6'1", 239, 4.58, 40. 33.5-inch vertical, 4.26 short shuttle, which is really good, and a 7.25 cone. That is a portrait of a really good athlete. He's super smart. I mean, he's not literally a Colt Boy Scout. This kid he's an Eagle Scout. I mean, he is on the All National Honor Society team. He's a guy that's smart. He plays all the linebacker positions. He's kind of mentally a Mike, but physically kind of a Sam. He's a guy that plays the game smart. He plays with a lot of range. He's fairly productive in college. I think he has good diagnose. He slips well. I think he's a willing hitter. Here's the problem. He has no impact when he hits. Leonard had some of this and still has some of that. Chris, will take those linebackers that, are very athletic and long, but not necessarily physical. I mean, don't confuse this guy with Mike Singletary, I guarantee you. Matter of fact, who he reminds me of within this defensive scheme, I don't know if people can remember back to the great Buck teams, and Derek Brooks was always the great will backer, that was sideline to sideline. Everybody knows Brooks. He's got a yellow jacket. But the Mike on that team was a guy named Shelton Quarles, who was a very much like Karike, very much like him. Athletic, could run the middle read in that Tampa 2, but if you ran right at him, not real physical, which we used to do when I was in New Orleans. I think he's as good an athlete as Walker. I don't think he's as explosive as Walker. Now they both, he's taller. He's got a little bit more range, but that's he'll be in there, and he obviously could work into a Sam position, nickel type backer type kid. So he's going to be in the mix. I mean, he was in all their special teams. So, most of these guys that can run, I don't know if you realize it or not, but Jerry Green, this kid, Jerry Green, is a really interesting guy. Again, Brian Baker, who was the defensive line coach at Mississippi State, now at Alabama, and I quoted Brian last week on Simmons and Sweat, and he said this kid is special. He was the most highly respected guy on a team full of stars. And he's just kind of a man without a country. He's been an outside backer, a rusher, tremendous work ethic, and he's kind of a freakish athlete, 6'4", 252, 4'6'3", 35 vertical, in a 7.27 cone 4.42 shuttle. This is a tremendous kid. I don't know where he's going to play. He's played on the edge some. He's played some stand-up. He's had 5 different coaches in the years he's been at Mississippi State. Very raw, just like the speed kid.
Yeah.
These are raw kids that I'm not sure where they go, but they have really terrific metrics. And what you see in them, and here's what you see in them: you see flashes, and I like that. When you get a down the line kid, particularly when he's a great character guy, football character guy, and he has those kind of metrics. Give me metrics. And then I see flashes. If a guy's had 5 different coaches and he's played 4 different positions, he's not going to be grooved in. The kid that comes from Tarleton State and just plays all over the place, he's not going to be a refined guy. But what I see is flashes of ability on those guys to get them late, and I really like that. And like I said, Green was also the captain of that team, and we got a captain's table now. So, like I said, I really, there's no question about this class is going to make us better. I think the important thing is Yasin. I think, Yasin is the guy. I think we need corner help. We want corner help. And what we want is Yasin to be the guy that Chris thinks he is.
Yeah. And, again, it all comes down to whether or not they improve and the Colts win. But we'll also look back at Sweat and compare and contrast that. Yeah.
Well, what I said was on the day of the draft, and, everybody is when we move back and, all of a sudden, Chris now is like the guy who comes down from Sinai with the tablets. Whatever he does is deemed as, this is the greatest of all times. Now, we did walk by 20 players to go to 46. So, you not only be compared with Sweat. Sweat, all I said about Sweat is your medical staff better be right on that, because at 26, if you're wrong, you basically walked by one of the great players in the draft. And you don't get those guys. Like Kevin Bowen said the other day, all those great rushers stay with the teams that they get because they don't let them out of the box. And then there's 19 other players now, like Abrams and Tillery. There's a lot of guys that you walked by to get to 46. So, that'll be important. Now, next year when you get that extra 2, you can be happy with it. But, that's certainly moving down certainly didn't help us a bit for 19.
Well, you were all over it on Friday, as you normally are. It was great to see you do the whole Jedi mind trick stuff with everybody, and then come back and break it down, man. It was really good. I heard from so many people saying, man, he was all over all these names. So it was impressive.
Had fun, John. I so enjoyed being with you down there, both nights. But I thought, and I know with the TV and everything, I don't know how many people really listen to us, maybe in the car. But I'll tell you what, from 5:30 to about 10:15 Friday night, we were hot. From your start to it, I tell you, I love being with Jack Mewhart. What a great guy. I've watched him and covered him, but what a classy guy. And, of course, Sorge and Taylor on my boards. But, I really enjoyed Jack. I just had a great evening, and I was really pretty happy with the way that Friday night turned out.
No, it was great. It really was. Hey, all the best, my friend. We'll keep in touch about this and see if anything else goes down as the offseason now kind of, I guess, slows down for us a little bit.
Okay, Johnny.
Hey, thank you, Rick.
Talk at you.
Rick Venturi, awesome work right there. Awesome. Tony, anything to add?